This PowerPoint is a timeline of 10 important events that impacted the education of ELLs. First up, we have a court case. This one is Mayer versus Nebraska, and it took place in 1923. So, the Supreme Court invalidated a Nebraskan law that banned the teaching of foreign languages to children, finding that the law violated the 14th Amendment Due Process Clause. The Mayer versus Nebraska court case also established states' authority to determine the language of instruction in public schools, which is good, and the court protected the right of parents to organize after-school and weekend heritage classes for their children. So families are still able to kind of honor their culture while the kids are in school, which is good. Next, we have another court case. This is Brown versus the Board of Education, and this took place in 1954. So this whole court case has to do with the prevention of segregation, meaning that they do not want certain students to be split up from the rest of the whole grade. This opened the way for high-quality bilingual programs, and this really provided a lot of equal education opportunities, not only in education, but in like extracurriculars, sports, art. Some students weren't able to participate because they couldn't speak English, but this kind of put a prevention to that. And a direct quote from the book was, ELLs cannot be fully separated from other students throughout their education under the guise of helping them learn English. Okay, another court case, and this one took place in 1947. It was Lau versus Nicholas. So this was all about a Chinese student who some people thought was being treated unfairly, and that's how the whole court case started. So it started out by some Chinese students that only spoke Chinese. They were being unfairly left to a sink or swim method in the mainstream classes. This whole court case kind of caused the Lau remedies, which those prevent districts from ignoring ELL needs. Justice William Douglas argued that for more than just textbooks and teachers for ELL students, but they really need more like real assistance and just to kind of like put a focus on them, because it's really not fair whenever they just get a couple teachers and a couple textbooks. Like, they really don't speak English. They need a lot more help than that. And another direct quote from the book for this one is, the essence of Lu was codified into federal law through the Equal Education Opportunities Act of 1947, soon after the case was decided. Okay, this is our first act. So this is the Equal Education Opportunities Act of 1947. A direct quote is, no state shall deny educational opportunities to an individual on account for his or her race, color, sex, or national origin. Subsequent laws have been based on this legislation. This whole Equal Education Opportunities Act was influenced by the Lau versus Nicholas case that we just talked about in the slide before. And this whole thing kind of works against language barriers that could prevent equal participation for all students in instructional legislation. So once again, just trying to make sure no one is left out, that every student gets the same opportunities, whether they speak English natively or they are learning it. This seemed to be a really big issue before this act kind of came into place and helped straighten it out. Okay, now we have the Title IX Bilingual Education Act, and this kind of lasted from 1968 to 2002. So it was published by Senator Ralph Yarbrough from Texas. It provided funds to school districts to support bilingual education programs. Originally, this only covered Spanish-speaking students. However, it kind of grew into 37 more small, similar proposals. So I guess it starts small, and then we kind of branched out and realized that other students need help too, not just the Spanish-speaking ones. By 1944, the bill was kind of reauthorized to help better educate ELL students and remain consistent in English education. And the original bill that was passed in 1968, it was kind of vague. It was like the first one. So in the early 2000s, they had to step it up a little bit. And actually, up to 32 different states had already adopted similar policies to this. Okay, so this court case is called Castinda vs. Pickard. This took place in 1981, and this was kind of another blow against the bilingual education. So, Raymondville School was caught not meeting the requirements of EEOA, and that is the Equal Opportunities Act. The court refused to support the demand for bilingual education. The three-pronged test resulted from this case to determine a school's appropriate action. The first step is that it has to be based on a sound education theory. The second one is sufficient resources and personnel are enforced correctly. And the third is every school and teacher must be helping students overcome language barriers in the most effective way. Okay, so this is the No Child Left Behind Act that was passed in 2002 and lasted till about 2016. So it was passed under President George W. Bush, and it kind of so the Title IX Bilingual Education Act was replaced with the Title III Language Instruction for Limited English Proficient and Immigrant Students. So a good thing to notice is they dropped the word bilingual in there. That is very important to take note of. So the Title I No Child Left Behind focused on accountability by intense testing in English, language arts, reading, and math in grades 3 through 8 and in high school. So pretty much from 3rd grade up. We now know about this through the STAR test. That's kind of like the same thing. So all students, including ELLs, must pass those tests. Yes, every student does have to pass that, which is a challenge. Each state is required to create academic content assessments to measure those standards and to be held accountable. So they have to do this kind of just to make sure that they're still accounting for ELL students and they're still educating their children in the best way possible. Okay, this is the Race to the Top thing, and it was enforced in 2014. So this alone provided over $4 billion in competitive grants for states to begin reform efforts. To qualify for this, states had to adopt college and career readiness standards. States were expected to develop high-quality assessments that were valid and reliable for all students. There were complaints that with the high stakes testing, ELL students would not be completely addressed adequately. So the concern was that with the high stake testing, teachers would get obsessed with passing and kind of just put ELLs in the back burner and focus on other students. This is the Every Student Succeeds Act, also known as the ESSA. It was signed into a law by Obama in 2015. It gives states flexibility in establishing school accountability programs. It continues the testing standards and requirements of No Child Left Behind. And the continued reliance on high-stake testing had some educators a little bit worried, just because that's kind of intense for all students. And also, this ESSA implementation plans were applied in 2018 and 2019, so very recently. Last but certainly not least, we have Every Student Succeeds Act. This was from 2015 to the present, so it was signed into a law by Obama also on December 10th in 2015. It was used to maintain the standards and testing requirements, similar to No Child Left Behind, but it allows a little bit more flexibility than that one. So it appears to be an improvement over No Child Left Behind. It kind of replaced it. They kind of bettered it, I guess. And then it affords states the opportunity to establish more reasonable expectations for both ELLs and schools. It's still too early to have good evidence whether the policies impact the education of ELLs in the most efficient way. However, we do have some evidence now to believe that it is a good idea and it is kind of serving a good point.